As you're all aware, there have been some changes over the video game landscape. Sony announced that they are no longer doing physical media for their systems on the PlayStation going forward next year. So I thought I would take a moment to talk about why this could be the end of the video game landscape as we know it going forward from there. And what came to mind was the game PT. Now, PT, for those who aren't aware or aren't really clued in, was a game developed several years ago now, only on a PlayStation system. The only way you could play it was on a PlayStation system. It was a digital only playable teaser, as what the acronym was. It was developed as a joint venture for PlayStation and Konami as part of a lead up to a Silent Hills game. Now, this game was extremely popular at the time, and more so, it was extremely influential at the time as well. We see this influence in tons of games going forward from there, in the horror genre especially. It's often imitated or mimicked many times over, to the point it basically became played out. However, now that game is no longer available. Sony pulled it from their PlayStation Store. Konami did not make it available anywhere else. So if you want to play it, you can. You can't download it. You can't purchase it. It's gone. The only place it still exists is on some consoles that still have it downloaded to be played. That's the only way you can access it now. So for anyone that wants to play it and experience it for themselves going forward and maybe be influenced by it to make their own games, they can't anymore. That is the future we're looking at when it comes to what Sony's doing with physical media. And Sony's not the only one that's going to be doing it. Microsoft with their Xbox has been gradually but surely moving towards a digital only format. With their Xbox Game Pass and their frequent advertising about how you can have an Xbox anywhere, which means that you can have an Xbox not in your home, but in your phone or on a tablet or on a gaming handheld. But it would all be digital based. You would not own a physical copy of this game. Same thing for Nintendo. There's many of their games that are available only on the eShop that you can't buy physically anymore. Many of the Pokemon games are only available if Nintendo puts them on the eShop, some of their older legacy titles. So if Sony does this, one of the big three in the video game console space, most likely Xbox will follow, as will Nintendo. And that would be the death knell for these companies going forward from there, I believe. Because physical media is not just about getting the games to play them on a console. It's about the legacy and the influence of these consoles, these brands as it were, on people that play them. Whether they get it on day of release or if they get it 20 years from now and play it on a console that they picked up somewhere, those people are then brought into the fold of that culture and the content of the video game. Whether it's Mario, whether it's God of War, whether it's Halo, what have you, they are now part of something larger and something that they have experienced and can share with others and they can talk about, and the fan base grows organically from there. If there is no physical media, then it becomes completely beholden to the companies that own those consoles to make them available for users. And if they decide they don't want to do that anymore, you can't play it anymore. You can't even recommend it to anyone because they can't play it then either. So you lose that legacy of that game going forward. And I'm not talking about in a few years. I'm talking about in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. Will those games still be available that came out next year or the year after? Grand Theft Auto 6 is going only digital. Will that game be available in 10, 15, 20 years? Maybe, maybe not. But if it's only digital, you would have no way of getting a hold of it at that time. Your kids couldn't get a hold of it. Grandkids couldn't get a hold of it. And if this sounds unbelievable to you, like why would anyone play a game 20 or 30 years from now? Look at the retro handhelds, retro scene for handhelds, for emulated consoles, things like that. There's still a market for those. People still want to play those games. Newer generations can get access to those games, whether they're physical copies or emulated copies that they copied off of a physical disc or cartridge. Those things still existed to be able to provide to the next generation to keep the fan base growing and to keep the IPs of these developers alive. There's fans of games that haven't been in circulation for 20 plus years now. Why? Because they can still play the games. They can still get access to the physical copies, or somebody took the time and effort to copy those games from a physical format to a digital format for an emulator. And that is how this system has continued to flourish for 30, 40 years now. How people that were born after the year 2000, even after the year 2010, have experienced these older games and been able to access them, even if Sony or Xbox or Nintendo did not make them available on their online store. They still could get access to those games because the physical media still existed. They could get a console. They could get an emulator and run it from a ROM or an ISO that was ripped from those original games and experience it for themselves for the first time. The physical media format is important to not just one company, but to all of them combined. If there's nothing to carry forward, then there's no legacy for those companies that will keep them alive in the future for future generations to experience. That's why it's so important that physical media still needs to exist. If you don't have it, then you don't have a future. I'd like Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo to keep those things in mind going forward for their fans. And if they want to keep making new fans in the future, don't get rid of your fan base, because this will do it. This will drop your future generations off. If they can't play those original games, then why would you have a fan base going forward after that? There's nothing to recommend if there's nothing to play from that time period. And future generations may not want to play what's the latest offering because they have no inherent loyalty or fondness for your brand. Why would anyone want to play a Nintendo game in the year 2045 if nobody talks about Nintendo that much and can play those games and give them to their kids to play from this time going forward? That's something to think about. You can't think of just the short-term profitability. You have to think of the long-term user base that you have cultivated for the last 30 plus years. If you completely turn your back on physical media, you turn your back on your entire future legacy.